Well, here we are again. I've pressed the go live button and it is flashing at me, so I'm trusting the technology. Hello, I'm Dave Williams, your friendly host of the weekly Find Your New Normal broadcast. Love to be here with you every week and sharing a lot of great information about the issues that many of us face when we're involved with a life-changing event. And every week, I get to share the stage with my good friend, Sheila, I was going to say Schuster again, Sheila Schultz at my side. And it's easy this time because she's beside me. And sometimes she's all over the screen, but right beside me. Hello, Sheila. How you doing today?
Hi, Dave. I am great. As usual, very excited to be here. I am Sheila Schultz, and my business is A Quiet Mind. I help people move through transitions in life and adapt to change, although it seems like my role is always changing too. So as I move through my life and absorb lots of changes, I think I'm better equipped to help people move through theirs.
And you do it so well, both with me and all the people that I know that you know who tell me that I should tell you that you're doing a good job.
Okay, great.
When I have a good night's sleep, I
know it's a little scary.
Than normal. It's very odd. But today it's supposed to be a practical day. I mean, that's the feedback I've got. Our audience has certainly sent many letters of we like you, and I've had a few I don't like you so much, but we do have a lot of people who are saying that all the things we've been talking about in season 3 have been meaningful, but in some ways not understandable in terms of what do I do with the information. And frankly, sitting back, we've talked about a lot of different things. I mean, we've looked at things from a very straightforward, let's look at it from a behavioral science, psychology, social working perspective. We've brought in, a person with a near-death experience. We've brought a media host in who was helping us understand Emanuel Swedenborg and, a 1750s theologian's perspective, having walked for years and years in the afterlife. We've talked to, a psychic reader who introduces to angels. I mean, I've been looking at what we've been doing, and I would be just a little off-centered here, saying, what is it we're doing? And right. I think today is there a way of putting all of this together? I mean, is that the kind of feedback you've been getting from the people who've watched you?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's great that we had all these people in, because to me, it shows just how much you've been able to expand your perspective, coming from where you did 3 or 4 years ago to where you are today. How many people you've met, how many perspectives you've been fortunate enough to see. And now that you've lived through some tough times, I think that's when you have the ability to be more open and more curious about that kind of thing. So Dave, I think the one thing that the audience may or may not know about you is really what your story is and the progression through it. And honestly, I think the things that happen to you are unique to you, but the questions you had and the doubts and the concerns and worries are very similar to what most people go through in a crisis situation. So I would love to put something together based on all of the information that we've gathered and the people that we've talked to, and see if we can put a series of, information or a program together. But why don't you spend a minute or two and tell people, and I'll pop in and ask some questions about.
Yeah, no, today is really get your pen and paper out, because I think I do want to try and organize things together, because that's what I've done over the last few years, trying to answer the questions. And it was, as everyone does know, that was the motivation for doing the broadcast called Find Your New Normal. I was trying to find my new normal. And we're now at a stage, and I'm certainly at a stage where those of you who began with us at season 3 know I defined that I actually did begin my new normal on September the 3rd of this year. 2016. But that was a 3.5-year journey, and that in itself amazes me thinking about it. And we're here in December the 1st. Santa's around the corner, and I'm thinking about the next year and what to do and what we're going to do with our next season. And today, it's really, you've got to take all the information that we've shared and build your own personal action plan. If you're interested in what we've been talking about over the full 3 seasons, it's because you found yourself facing a life-changing event. And yes, way at the beginning, it was because I was a cancer patient who was really, literally facing death, had faced death during the treatment program, and was actually asked, do you wish to live or die? And if you wish to live, you've got to do some medical treatment, or we're quite prepared to put you into palliative care, drug you, and let you die. And they figured I'd be dead within 3 days. So I had to give them an answer very quickly so that I could die peacefully, say goodbye to my friends. And that was as a lot of people, you don't get too many opportunities in life where someone gives you a decision to make. Would you like to live or should you die? And that combined with the cancer diagnosis created some stress in my life. I really, was trying to figure out what was going on. And unfortunately, my diagnosis came at the end of what I would now call in retrospect a severe depression. I had completed what I had considered to be my life journey. I had accomplished what I wanted in business, had accomplished what I wanted with my family. There were few, if any, mountains to climb, no reason to proceed, and was quite grateful, actually, when I got sick, because I said, well, that's great. This is the end of it all. Makes total sense to me. However, it was an opportunity to now decide, what do you want to do with your life? And as we've talked over the months, it's been, hey, some of you may be facing, a serious illness that brings confusion in your life and stress and anxiety. But it may also be a divorce that you ask the question, why me? Why is this happening? It may be a recognition that a close member has died. And as some of you have seen in the last few weeks, you may have had what they call a spiritually transformative event. You've had a near-death experience or an out-of-body experience, and somehow or other you jumped into the ethereal afterlife, and in some cases met God, walked with Jesus, saw what the afterlife was about. All of the things I'm talking about put you in this real state of confusion.
Right.
And you've got to recognize that. I didn't understand that until now, where that's just part of the new process. You've got to acknowledge that there is all this stress, this uncertainty, this confusion, but you have to make a decision. What do you now do? And those of you with a piece of paper, I think that's your first thing. I must recognize that that's okay. I am in a state of confusion, and I am calling out for help. I know even today, calling out, I can remember, I need this to stop. I need peace. I need some calm. I can't take this anymore. I was in a terrible state, and that's what you should write down.
You know what? I think that's really important for people to hear, because there's two things. One is when people see you, Dave, you look vibrant and healthy, and you're working every day, and you're always enthusiastic, and you're friendly. And, people, I think, have this perception that, well, whatever happened to you couldn't have been that bad. But trust me, when I first met Dave, he was not in a good place. And I mean, just your physical appearance, first of all, you had got your physical self had been just traumatized to a tremendous degree. And secondly, the first thing that I remember when we first started having conversations was your emotional state. And the thing that was bothering you was that you had an emotional state that really confused you, because before this, you had held everything together. You were, just get down to business. I fight through everything. I'll push through. And all of a sudden, and this is something that other people relate to that I've spoken with, you became tender. There was this emotion that came up in you that you had never experienced before. So you started wondering who this person is. And that's frightening. It's really scary, especially for someone like you, who's very, you're
Type A.
Everything has to be in a box, and it's, you're knowledge based, and it's A plus B equals C. So to have these emotions come in were very frightening to you. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, it was quite disturbing, and that is a mild term for it. It was shattering because I was told by the professional workers that David was dying, literally, not just physically, but mentally, and that there would be a grieving process of the old Dave as you decided to put yourself together to move forward. And the analogy I use, because as I'm a structural person, I had to snap together my life Lego blocks differently, and they had been all disheveled on the table, and there was no blueprint. And now I had to somehow put them back together again in a new fashion without that blueprint. And being structured in a type A and a need to get on with things and get on with life. And I had made the choice, obviously, to live. I didn't take that option to die on the weekend. So now I had to go through the severity of the treatment program and lose 100 pounds and readjust my mental mindset. And the guidance that I got was not satisfying for me. And yes, I had good medical people and I had great psychologists and social workers to lean on, but they weren't really helping me redefine myself, because I had to go on an inward journey and truly investigate what were the stumbling blocks that were in the way for me to live a satisfying, joyful life. And I was being bombarded with visions of who I used to be and the feedback that my friends, family, associates would give me. And they would always say, Dave, you don't have any empathy and you don't have any compassion. You got a lot of knowledge and you fix things well, but the human side isn't there. You don't live from your heart, you live from your head. And I didn't know what they were talking about. And I think, and again, now 3.5 years later, nearly 4 years later, and talking to other people, that's not uncommon when you're in this stressful life situation that is, they call it life changing, because you're going to change your life and you have to decide to move forward and find a new normal. And that's the number 2 thing that you've got to write down on the paper today. Is the first one being, don't be worried that you're out of your depth and you're falling apart and you're confused and you're stressful and you're anxious, but you will find a way forward if you decide to look at it as finding a new normal, not going back. And that's what we said. Right. You don't go back to the way you were. And that was one of the problems with the treatment programs I had. They said, well, you'll get through this, your life will be saved, and you'll get on with your life, you go back to who you were. And it turned out that was not right. That you gotta write that down in the notes today.
Right. Who am I now?
Who am I now?
Right.
And
right.
We do not live in the present moment, as I discovered. You live in the past. What happened to me, why it happened to me, why is that something I need to know? And then where am I going in the future? What do I want to be? How's it going to be? How can I control it? How can I develop it? You're a time traveler and you're all over the place and you don't center and you cannot get your life Lego block snapped together until you live in the present moment. And that sounds very airy-fairy, and I didn't understand it. And number 3 on your list should be, it takes time. You need patience. You will need to learn some new lessons some people I've met move through this quickly, but many people like me take a long time before they understand the magic recipe that you're in and how to organize yourself so that you do live in the present moment.
Well, I think, Dave, that you bring up a really good point. I think the more logical and sort of engineering minded that you tend to be, the harder it is to walk into this new space, because it's so, it's not fixed at all. It moves. And people who are type A and have a real strong belief that if I do this, then this will happen, a cause and effect that is very personal. To me, that has always come up in my clients who are, you know, quote unquote rational, logical. You know, they're educated, they've got their knowledge, and it takes some time and some patience to break away from that thinking. And all it is habit. All it is conditioning. So we've been conditioned to think that we are in total control of our lives. And when we find out that we're not, it is so disconcerting. And I think for some people who are more flexible, I tend to be that kind of a person. Plus, I feel like I was just ready, and I didn't even know I was ready for the changes that happened to me. So when they happened, it was almost, in an odd way, a relief. Like, this is exactly what I needed. Now I'm ready to just open the door wide. And I think the next step for me, and maybe for you after you get to that place, is then you start looking into spirituality. You know, then you start going, well, maybe there's something else going on here, not just me and my life and me in control. What else is there?
But even before you can get to that, you got to really decide, how do I live in the present moment? Because that in itself is, in my case, and at least in 3 other people that I've had the joy of working with, is the turning point. How do you find gratitude for what's happening to you? And in a stressful situation, or in my case, my cancer treatment, how could I find any moments during a given day that I could be grateful for, other than, my goodness, I'm breathing? I mean, that was the best I could dig out.
And that's great.
Well,
that works, right?
That's not where normal people begin. I mean, how many of us sit around saying, I'm so grateful that I'm breathing? And, you know, I was grateful when they finally fed me. I mean, I had 9 weeks. 9 weeks? Yeah, about 9 weeks of intrafluid, being fed through my vein rather than eating. So, intravenous. That was the word I was searching for. So TPN was something. How many people have not eaten for 9-10 weeks? Trust me, that's not a good experience. And during that period, you are struggling every moment to exist. And people are saying, well, you should be grateful. You know, I mean, you're living, you're surviving. You know? And I'm saying, what? And true, people around me, which helped me in a strange way, gain empathy and compassion, because I saw other people suffering. I saw other people that I met that died. I saw people get cancer diagnosis at 3 o'clock in the morning and just break apart into a pile of tears. You know, it affects you. And I had never been around suffering. I'd never been around people. I'd never been to a funeral, and still never been to a funeral. Oh my gosh, wow. Yeah. So being thrown into that, plus though I'd never ever been in a hospital. I mean, I had not been ill for 40 years of my life, never been to a doctor. So being thrown into a different atmosphere, being thrown around death, being thrown into suffering, and seeing myself trying to survive and saying, so what the heck am I grateful for? How is it? It's, however, when you can find that, your life changes. The day I started recognizing at the end of the day, being able, and people said, well, you got to write a gratitude journal. I said, you're out of your mind, a gratitude journal. But then I tried to do that. And those of you that watch the early cancer shows know I found a group called My Lifeline. And My Lifeline was a process that allowed me to take a centering moment of my day and focus on it, because I needed to share it with everybody else. It's one thing you find when you're into death or divorce or to disease. Everyone says, how you feeling? How you doing? What's going on? and you sit there saying, I've said this 300 times and I don't want to talk about it. And so you become, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's great. But in fact, it's not. And so I needed to learn how to become self-aware. How was I actually feeling in that moment in time? Write it down. And eventually, over the weeks and months, I started finding that at the end of the day, I could summarize the day and find all those little things that I was grateful for. The sun rose, there was a tree outside, there was a cardinal on my window, there was a popsicle that I was able to eat, there was someone that I was able to put a smile on their face. These insignificant, little, tiny things I suddenly found as a way of being grateful for, and kept me in that moment. I wasn't worrying about my past or whether I was going to survive. I was just dealing with the moment. And you can't get on with the forward movement till you've centered yourself in the present.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as you know, that's the basis for all of my work is living in the moment. And it's important for people to know that you found that through gratitude journals. That's not the only way to do it. There are many, many doors to finding presence. But as you mentioned, it's critical. It is a turning point. Once you get to the place, and for most people, you have to learn to slow down. And you have to become more aware of the fact that you actually do live in the past, or you do live in the future. Most people don't realize how much they do that, including me. When when this all happened to me, I started taking notes of how many times my mind would jump. It's appalling how many times I would be into the future. And it was always about worry about tomorrow, and I wonder if. So that slowing down and paying attention to when your mind is jumping helps you realize, oh, there is a popsicle in front of me and I'm appreciating it. So as I said, and I can write and make lists forever of different ways to get to that present moment. And maybe we'll do that at some later point, put some things down that are very, very specific. But anything you could read about it, anything that really makes sense to you and jumps out at you that feels good. For you, it was gratitude journals. For someone else, it might be going for hikes or, whatever it is, giving things some space. But you're right. You're absolutely right. Finding the present moment, to me, is the key to everything. To all of our worries and our concerns and world problems is staying here in this moment and finding the joy in this.
And it makes you aware for the first time of what you meant when you said, I'm asking for peace. I thought I was asking to be calm. And being calm, I was trained what to do with deep breathing exercises, with various psychological techniques, with meditation. That made me calm. That stabilized the anxiety, the hormones in my body. It brought me some calmness, which allowed me to now think clearly, because when you're in a state of anxiety, stress, you can't think of what to do and what you should do and what you need to do or want to do. So you can get calm and then you can move along, but you're still not at peace. You're still not able to deal with what's happening to you in this life-changing event because you are in the process of change. So how can you find peace in change? And you've got to recognize how to become self-aware. What you told me early in was being mindful, how to focus in on what's happening around you in that present moment. So if you can get to the present moment, then you have to be aware of what's happening in that present moment. And if you learn to do that, then you can get to this, in my case, sense of gratitude, that then at the end of the day, I learned I was going to be at peace before I went to sleep. And I went month after month after month without sleep, without dreaming, in the state of anxiety, being up all the time. In the hospital, I was in hospital for over a year. It just day after day after day of noises and interruptions and people coming in and dying. And it was horrendous. Where was the peace? Not just my own personal calm. Yet this process that we're sharing today is, if you can know that's what you need to figure out how to do in your own personal way. You know, there is no magical truth. You know, I wish we had the magic, but it's personal. You will find your own truth in your own way. But first you have to know that that's what you need to be looking for, because you are lost in the woods, and all those professional help that you're getting in and the wonderful love and help from your friends are not the guides that are going to help you get through this life-changing event. You are entering a process that you have to move along through. And these ingredients that we're talking about now are the special sauce that helps you get along this next baby step.
So finding that present moment, finding the presence in every single moment is the key, so that you can notice that you're grateful for whatever it is. So the presence always comes first. And, you know, there are so many ways, as I've said, that you can, little tips throughout the day to practice those things. And I've done it all. You know, I had sticky notes on the mirror saying, take a deep breath and be right here, be here. You know, keep your mind where your body is. But the thing I have to say, just one thing that, you know, to give our audience just a little something, I used my senses a lot when I was going through this. So for me, feeling things, when we talked about being mindful, I would put a little note next to the sink to remind myself that when I'm washing my hands, to not wash the hands in an effort to get them clean, which most people do, right? Just wash your hands and feel the warm water and smell the soap, and then feel the towel on your hands as you're drying it. That is one step into mindfulness. So for me, it was the touch. It was getting in the car and feeling the steering wheel. We never do that, right? But grip it and feel it. And you only have to do it for a second. That's it. Then you are present. That's your little presence practice for that hour or whatever, and you're done. So it's just these little tiny things that you insert into your day, whatever feels right for you. Those might seem crazy to some people, but, you know, like I said, at some point we could make lists and lists of ideas and make videos about them, about, you know, how
we
to
will.
this.
I can see season 4 with this kind of material in it. Because as you said earlier, you want to become you are trying to establish a new normal for yourself, which means new habits. And the new habits can't begin until you become mindful of what needs to change, because you can't rehearse the things that you were doing before, because they don't fit into the person that you are becoming. And the moment that you're becoming mindful of the present moment, you're no longer what you used to be. And so it took me that's why with me it took years to work through this, because Sheila would walk me through what we're talking about here, and sure, Sheila, you're the great, help me, whatever.
So what?
You say you're out there in the desert at 6 o'clock in the morning enjoying what?
Tell me, so why did you start believing me? Why did you start trusting it? What do you think it was?
I found those little things were now becoming something I was grateful for, and made me feel there was meaning to me being me. And because I was becoming self-aware, because at the moment I started living in the present moment, I would say, so who am I in the present moment? I would ask that question. Whereas before I began or got thrown into the life-changing event, I had my bio all figured out. You asked me who I am, I could tell you exactly who I am, what I did, what I liked, what I loved, what I was good at, what I was bad at, what I had done, where I was going. I had everything all laid out, as so many people do. Now my Lego blocks were all over the place, and even asking, how are you feeling? I didn't know. I had to start right at the beginning saying, look at that, I'm breathing. And now I'm eating. And now I'm walking. I mean, when I finally got out of the hospital, it took me 3 months to learn how to walk, you know, because I couldn't get across the street. I mean, literally. I mean, I had lost my muscle mass, and I had to learn. I used to do 10 kilometers on my bike in a snap and just run with it. You know, loved it. Now I can't even walk across the street. had to literally wait at the corner till somebody else came along in case I fell while I was walking the street and got run over by a car. That made me rethink who I am. My self-identity, if I can't even walk, really changed who I thought I was as a person. And we're not getting into the psychology constructs of, what kind of values do you have and what attitudes you have. But they started to be the next step once I became aware of the moment that I was in and asked myself, what is it that I need as part of my new world that I'm going to be part in order to, and again, a strange concept, write this down. My goal now was to live a happy, joyful, peaceful life. Well, that had never been part of my reason to exist.
No, not even close, folks.
No,
not even close.
No. So if that's now your picture of the new normal you anticipate falling into, what kind of person's going to be there? Go ahead, ask all those who are listening to this on the replay, take a piece of paper down and say, what makes you happy? I dare you to go and ask yourself what makes you happy. And you can be on that exercise for days. And it's not about, I want a better car, I want a better house, I want my vacation. You will quickly learn that even if that materialized tomorrow, that would not necessarily make you happy. It would maybe give you a smile on your face and a sense of pleasant happiness, but that's not what it is that gives you a joyful, peaceful, and I'm going to throw in loving life. And these new concepts for me were very new concepts. And that meant wearing a new suit of clothes, because I had to look in the mirror and say, oh, I want to be a loving person. I want to be a kind person. I want to be a gentle person. I want to provide meaning. I want to provide service. I suddenly had to redefine what it was that I needed to be as a human. And all of the lessons that I was learning had to be written down, thought through, and take literally months. They say a new habit in 21 days. Well, each of these new ideas will take 21 days. And so month after month after month before you see some new behaviors happening and get comfortable with it. Because you don't get comfortable, even if you succeed in now accomplishing what you think you want to do, the feedback you get is not comfortable. If someone told me, Dave, you seem to be a nice person. You seem to be, a kind person. I said, what? What are you saying? That's not my self-identity. That's not who I am. And I've got to now accept feedback that I'm getting and not just brush it aside, but internalize it and
look at it.
Look at it. So that's why it takes time. I mean, even if you're magically able to be self-aware, do a self-portrait, figure it all out, work the habits into place, have new values, create your new normal, you start to live in it, you're not going to be comfortable. You just moved into a brand new house and the furniture doesn't fit anymore. The drapes have to be put up in a different way. The lighting isn't right. You're not comfortable. How long does it take for you to get comfortable in your new house that you just moved in? You were all excited by it. Oh, I can hardly wait to get into that new house.
Right.
You're not comfortable for a long time. And then you hear the furnace creaking and the wind coming through the windows. And
well, Dave, I think one of the things that you just hit on that's really important for people to realize and is that when you're not living in the moment, you have a very different idea of happiness, and it's illusory. So happiness, when you get into a state of presence, happiness has nothing to do, it is completely independent of circumstances around you. Doesn't matter if it's raining outside, doesn't matter if there's a tornado going by, it doesn't matter if you've just lost everything that you own. That's independent of your happiness, and that is only accessible when you're living in the moment. When you're focused on worrying about tomorrow or regretting past, you are unable to see that. You're unable to get to that happiness. I think people confuse happiness with pleasure. You know, oh, that'll be great if I have a really perfect spouse, or if I have a wonderful, you know, if I had a dream job or $1 million or whatever it is that we have in our heads. That is speaking from that conditioned mind that is not present.
No.
So thank you for that.
Well, it's
I like the
important that you
analogy.
write that down and take note, because it's
Yeah.
a journey that you're on. It's not, I lost my house, I'm rebuilding a new one. I lost my significant other, I'm getting remarried. I fought cancer and now I'm into a new. It doesn't work that way. And that's all I heard for months after months after months, that it did work that way. And it turns out, and it's not just my perspective, I've now tested this out with all kinds of other people going through these life crises. It's a process that you get into, and you are changing the world that you see yourself in, and there are consequences to those changes. Now, you know, I have found a new normal that I am finding a good place to be in, but that meant that I had to make a lot of changes in myself, but also changes in the people that I was with, because the people that knew you before your life event are not necessarily comfortable with the new butterfly that's emerging, you know, from the caterpillar stage. This new entity that you now find yourself to be is not just a little minor thing. Now, you know, I've heard some people say that, but when I prompted them and said, well, let's take a look at how you viewed life before you face death, or before this critical event occurred, and now let's take a look. You have changed significantly.
Sure.
And the friends that are around you are not comfortable with you and drop away. And some of the people that you thought you were really good friends with, you wish they would go away because they don't support you at all. And so on your action recovery plan, you've got to note that the relationships that you have are going to change, even with your significant other, the person that you're living with, married to, the relationship with your children, people that you thought would be solid and there for you forever, are going to go through an adjustment process of their own. And if you're like most of us, we don't know how to communicate effectively, let alone talk about these issues effectively to other people. And so you're going to need new communication skills. You're going to need a new way of being open and sharing, much like Sheila and I are doing now. Some people, you know, would find, well, I can't talk that way. I can't think that way. I can't be that open. I can't share. Well, it turns out the degree to which you can get comfortable in able to communicate how you're feeling, how you're thinking, what your changes are, the new kind of solidification of the relationship you're going to have. And that includes work as well, your career, your boss, your manager, your employees. All of the people spinning around you are going to be affected by you in your new normal. And so it has to be on your recovery plan. What am I going to do when that happens? And who am I going to talk to that gives me help? And what can I do on my own? And how can I communicate effectively? And don't get all scared by all this. It's all beginning to sound very complicated, but you've got a lot of time. This doesn't all get compressed in 30 days. You know, I had 3.5 years to figure this out. I mean, but I can remember saying, well, what kind of job am I going to have? I mean, I was still dealing with chemo effect and trying to be on the phone, and I'd be having a conversation, and then I forgot who the heck I was talking to. Sure. I mean, you have a growth process to get through the physiological changes, and then you got to figure out, you know, is this job I'm in the one that fits me well? Do I need a new career? Do I need to do something else with my life? I know people who decide that it's time for a divorce. It wasn't a great marriage anyways, and now it's time to let that close out and start again. I mean, you're going to find yourself up against a lot of other consequences as you heal, as you become aware of yourself, as you decide to live in your new normal. And I know you're going to say, I'm going back to the way I was. I know you're going to say it. I said it month after month. Everyone I talked to said,
well, you know what? You do,
you
want to. There's, you know, and I think that's a really good point for people to hear. And because I watched it in you, and I've watched it a dozen times with other, you know, with clients. But something in the presence gives you this little bit of confidence, like, well, now wait a minute. Now I'm seeing things more clearly. I wonder if I've been looking at things differently all my life, right? So you get into this kind of confidence thing, then you have to deal with your family and all these tugs, or people are saying, why aren't you doing it this way? And why are you acting differently? So it is a really scary time to make that change, to take that leap of faith and trust that that intuition that you've tapped into in that presence is right and everybody else is wrong about you. It's hard. It's a tough thing for you to take off that armor and take off that old person and stop trying to be who you used to be, and let it go and see what happens. See what is meant for you to do next. See what is, naturally. And I think the tendency is to try to get back to where you were doing as you did. I need to find a job. So what's my job going to be now? Well, that's tomorrow. So you really have to start paying attention to sort of this inner knowing that we all have, but we tend to listen to our heads too much. We listen to what everybody says we should do and what we've been educated to do. And so, it's a constant battle. What is my heart saying? And what is this new me saying? And it's arguing with the old me who wants to keep popping in. So if anybody out there is struggling with this and you're just so afraid to take that chance and that leap, know that it's okay to lose some relationships over this, because it's scary and you feel like you can't live without a person or live without a certain job you've always done. But there's something bigger. And I've just known that from my own personal experience and seeing dozens and dozens of clients go through the same transition. So I think it's helpful to talk to people who have done it, gone through this. And because, Dave, when you look back on it, you think of the worries you had back then. And of course, now they seem insignificant. They're like, gosh, what was I so worried about? But trust that little voice and those little quiet moments that you find in presence that are kind of nudging you in a direction that you never would have seen yourself doing before. Write it down, put it in a book. You don't have to do it today, but it's going to come back, and that's going to be something that you want to look at another date, when that date is now.
and you're opening up one of those, I'm going to call it a very uncomfortable area, and that is, where are those voices coming from? And that's why, we have on the show brought people in who are referencing the value of God and spirituality and the afterlife and heaven, because many of us believe that there are other forces around us that can guide and direct us, and we find comfort in our relationship with God, whether it's a religious doctrine that you're following, and in those moments of stress, you bring in your priest or your pastor. And those of you that are outside of the religious fabric are moving into more of a spiritual one, where there's still a belief in God and perhaps angels. And that's why we brought this concept of, are there angels, and how do psychics talk to angels? And I know people say, well, there are mediums and they talk to the dead. So saying, well, can all of those concepts now be brought into your life in a practical way to give you additional guidance and direction? And because, as Sheila was saying, you do have an intuitive sense. And anyone who's into this spirituality world is saying that is something you should tap into. That if you can get comfortable with your heart and the vibrational energy, because when you meet someone, oh, I feel good about that person, or no, I can't like that person at all. In many practical aspects, you have a gut feeling, we call it, about, well, that's a good job for me, or that's not a good job. That's a good date to go on, or that isn't a good person. I mean, we have these judgments based on our emotional feelings. And what we've been saying in a number of our shows is maybe that opens up the door for you to start to examine, is there more help that I can get beyond just my gut intuition? Is there an angel beside me? And many of us, like me, grew up saying, well, you got a guardian angel. Well, I don't know what a guardian angel is, but hey, I got one, and they're there to protect me. Oh, well, okay, great. now I've been learning that maybe there's more to this idea of angels. And those of you that didn't watch the show we did with Cindy Griffith, you've got to go and listen to her, because she was introducing, an angelic world to us that corresponded with what David Bennett saw on a near-death experience when he had a life review and had a view of what the afterlife could look like. We opened up something for you to start thinking about. We're not saying it's truth. We're not saying that this is a new doctrine. We're just saying that there are people who are other resources. I mean, 300 years ago, a psychologist would be a witch, burned at the stake, So just because today we accept social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, maybe we should do more than look at priests and pastors and spiritual leaders, and start to look at other resources that we can look to for guidance, direction, and maybe some insight to who we are and how we should live our life.
Yeah, and I should tell everybody I was teasing Dave in the green room earlier, because I told him he was a library now. The great thing for everyone watching is that he is a fanatical researcher, and he dives into every single detail about a topic. So he just spends his day just talking to people about topics and researching and writing it down and filing it. So just in this very small topic, he's got a plethora of information. And, that's one more thing we're going to have a whole series of videos on, I think, at some point. We can really talk about what are the resources, because, as you said, one size doesn't fit all.
No.
So you just find what feels right to you. And that's what I found in my experience. I did an awful lot of reading when I was going through all of my changes and losses. And there are some things that I would read half of a page and go, ugh, doesn't feel right. But there's something for everyone. And the volumes of information that Dave has compiled and the people he has met are just going to be so valuable, I think, to this audience. So especially, or specifically in this area where I think a lot of people don't know where to start. How do I start looking for these things? So we're just going to offer some suggestions and see what feels good, what feels right, and you give it a whirl.
Yeah, I think it's important to add to your checklist is, what is your relationship with God or to spirituality? Because certainly if you're facing a disease or you're grieving the loss of a loved one, the question of death and the afterlife is going to come in front of you. And then you're going to now decide, what do I believe about death and death transition? As Patty Burgess, one of our great fans who've been on the show many times, talking about a different way of transitioning to the next life. And she's got practical experience of dealing with the ill who have deathbed visions, and visit past loved ones who are welcoming them to the new life. And I thought people who had near-death experiences were a couple here and a couple there. There are literally millions. I mean, one of the recent studies of 14 million people have had a near-death experience. And I must have now gone through 300, 400 videos and, many dozen of interviews with people who have said they've, gone to the afterlife, traveled to the afterlife, and all have different perspectives. And I've discovered that there is some overlapping things, and next week on our show we're going to talk about some of that, because Curtis Childs from the Swedenborg Foundation is coming back, and David Bennett, the person who had the near-death experience, is coming back, and we're going to be talking about two very different perspectives of what the afterlife is about. And why? Because you're going to have to decide, is there nothing when I die? Is all ended? Okay. But if it's not, and it turns out 86% of people surveyed in North America believe there's something that happens after life. And 56% of people say there's actually a heaven. Now, obviously, that's a very high proportion, because so many in North America have a Christian or Judaic, religious background, where we talk about death and angel visitation to give prophetic visions. And when you die, some of us have some very juvenile perspectives. I thought you die, you get a white robe, you get a harp, and you're on a cloud and you're happy.
Sounds good.
That's what
you never know.
You
never know.
Well, that's what I grew up. But listening to other people now, I'm saying doesn't necessarily have to be so. Yet some people say that. I watched a show just a couple of weeks ago, an 8-part show brought through the Catholic Church, talking about what heaven's all about, and it was very unsatisfying for me. But for others, felt it was just what they needed. So you're going to be asked that question, just like they asked me. Oh, Dave, you may not survive this operation. Who's your power of attorney, and what would you like to be done with your body? Frankly, I had never thought of that. And there I was, about stressed out already, going into an operation saying, oh, what do I do? And now I've got some ideas of what do I want to do with my body? And is there something going to happen to my consciousness after I die? And because as Sheila says, I'm the structured person, always looking for a checklist answer. I want to get some options to consider. Am I getting a harp and a white robe, or am I actually got a different kind of life that actually I need? And as Cindy shared, if you believe that, those angels that you thought were just there as a nice guide, they can actually help you in defining your new normal. And she was talking about making an angel 911 call, much like we would call, the house is flooded, you call 911 and you ask for a plumber or electrician or a fireman or an ambulance. Well, Cindy was saying you're doing the same thing if you believe this structure, where now you can bring in just the right angelic help who specialized in business problems, health problems, relationship problems. There seems to be a group of people in the afterlife who want to help us and talk to us in order to make our life more joyful, more blissful. I don't know, but it sure adds a different way of me now restructuring. What can I do to affect my sense of well-being if I start to embrace some very woo-woo, strange concepts and make them practical? Because Patty Burgess, an end-of-life consultant, a coach, helps hospice workers deal with death, has family deal with death. We've met people now who are mediums. We've met people who are readers, psychic readers, who are tapping into something. We've listened to near-death experiences, and they're tapping into something. Well, maybe it's all hooey. Take that as a perspective, or maybe take a piece of it, because I believe that my doctors in white coats had all the answers, and I walked in with that and learned that they didn't necessarily have all the right answers, and frankly made some serious mistakes that really cost me caused serious problems in my life that have taken me now time to adjust because of their decisions that they help me guide my way through. So even the people that I trusted the most with my life were human and made mistakes. And so now I'm open enough to say my new normal will include an exploration of what angels can do for me, what the afterlife may or may not be like, if I can practically take something out of it to help me get through today.
That's
right. So at the end of the day, I've got a smile on my face. I've got gratitude and awareness for all the things I've been mindful of today, and very excited about what tomorrow is going to bring me as I face all my challenges, all my obstacles. They never go away. That's what life is all about. Is learning how to deal with obstacles, challenges, but doing it in a healthy way that doesn't pull you apart, doesn't cause breakdowns in all your relationships, doesn't create physical discomfort for you, but rather allows you to deal with all these stressors of life as simply the gas in your automobile. You can't take your automobile very far if it doesn't have any gas. Well, these stressors in our life, if we do it properly, are going to be the gas in your human engine to move you forward through life. You just need to know, where are you taking your car? What is the path that you're on? What kind of gas do I need for how long? And where can I get the next gas station planned to visit to fill up my car? And how am I open to all the new sights that I'm going to see as I explore what life has to offer? Fully aware that I'm going to be into storms and hurricanes, but I'm also going to be in beautiful sunny days and warm days. There's going to be so much joy, but there's going to be lots of troughs in my life, and that's where I get to grow and develop. So you need a framework for life in developing a new normal. And if you are like me, you come through it, you're so grateful for having the opportunity to reorganize yourself into living a much more joyful, bountiful, pleasant world. It still isn't the way I envision it, but man, it's a lot better than I was 5 years ago. And I am so grateful for having gone through the anguish and the suffering of my cancer treatment, because I've been able to build a new normal, build a new person, create new relationships, have new friends, and now learned enough that every week Sheila and I can come here and share things that may be of some value to you in the struggles that you're trying to deal with. It's just a glorious opportunity of helping, and so grateful that that's part of what we can do every week.
Yeah, and I think that pretty much says it. That is kind of what we're all about. We've gone through 5 or 6 steps today, and as you know, as a grief counselor and working with hospice patients, I, of course, you find everyone is asking questions about that. Some people say it's the afterlife. Some people say it's, whatever it is. It's just another realm that you're not typically focused on. And when you're going through a crisis and a tough time, all of a sudden that becomes very important. I haven't ever met a hospice patient who didn't want to talk about even in circular, even people who weren't religious at all or didn't have a belief, there was some conversation that came up where we ended up talking about it. And they were the ones that brought it up. I would never bring something like that up. So you get to a place where, and I think it is in that still presence, where you start opening up a little bit to, I wonder if, or I think I need something that I haven't seen before, and I wonder what that is. And like you said, there are so many ways of looking at it, whether you look to what's going to happen after you're gone from this life and how that's going to help you today, or whether it is just your faith, your religion. So whatever it is that you need to connect to help you to stay in this present moment, I think, is the key to that whole spiritual realm. But yeah, Dave, I think you've covered.
We cover a lot today, and we are at the top of the hour. And like usually, you want to go on and on because there's so much. And our commitment to you who are watching us is we will go on with more shows. And in fact, because of the feedback that people want more practical things, and hopefully today was practical. If you followed it or go back through the replay and scrub through the different sections, you've got some notes you can take that should help you. But tell us what you need to learn, because we want to put more structured information together. And it may even turn out to be a formal program that you can join into and have X number of meetings together and get your own personal action plan put together. The key is not to think of yourself as just recovering through the adversity that you've been facing to get healthy and well, but rather to find your new normal. I mean, that is the concept we want you every week to be thinking about, is what is my new normal? And it constantly changes because you're constantly going through more hurricanes in your life where you're going to have to reassess who you are. But if you've got the basic principles that we've been sharing today, you can put it together. And now your new normal becomes part of your new wardrobe of clothes. And you can go back to say, well, there was my new normal in 2016. This is my new normal in 2018. This is my new normal in 2020. You're going to find that you're going to be constantly moving along, as opposed to falling apart and trying to go back to the way it used to be and trying to deal with more stress and more anxiety. It is not the way to do it. It can't work. I've not seen anyone in the last 3.5 years, as I've talked to professionals who do it for a living. You don't go back. You got to be in the moment so that you can decide how you're going to move day by day forward. You can't be a time traveler. You've got to be in the present moment to deal with all the adversities of life. And they don't disappear. There's no magic wands. There's nothing anyone's going to tell you that if you only did this, your life is perfect. The perfection comes in the journey of going through the obstacle and succeeding at it, which amazingly makes you feel so good about everything because of the success of how you've managed to go through that adversity. And now the next storm is not such a big storm. You've got a whole new set of skills that are going to get you through. So please, tell us what you want. Tell us what you need us to talk about. Write us a note if you want to be in part of a program that Sheila and I will put together. And, we'll keep you on the mailing list. It's Dave at findyournewnormal.com. That just let us know. And, we will be able to, interact with you as we do every week to keep the show going. We've got a couple more interesting guests for this year. Then we've got the Christmas break, and then we're back into the next season, and we're trying to think of how we can be best of service to you. So any final comments, Sheila, before we close out?
No, I'd want to reiterate what Dave is saying, that we are really welcoming questions and ideas for how we can make this more solid for you. And one of the things that I've done in the past that have worked very well are just little 2-minute videos to answer a specific question or address a certain topic. So as you go through today's video, or today's show rather, and you see, okay, maybe it's my emotional state or my connection with family or whatever you're going through, if there's a very specific question, I would love to do a series of videos to answer specific questions. So wonderful.
And your best email address for them to get to you is?
My best address is sheila@aquietmindbysheila.com.
A quiet mind. Isn't that a lovely thing? I think, man, if you're in a life-changing event, getting a quiet mind is your dream, just your dream. But anyways, we really appreciate you all as our audience. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Come back next Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, where we'll carry on the conversation. And as I say, right now we've scheduled Curtis and David to come back and give us another perspective of the afterlife in a more tangible way than we introduced the concept. And some of you said, hey, tell us more. So we're going to do some more. And then we've got a couple of other speakers in December before we hit the holiday season. So more shows to come, but we had enough feedback that you wanted something more practical today. And hopefully your pen hasn't run out of ink as you've been writing pages and pages of notes. So thank you all for coming. Come back to findyournewnormal.com and sign up for next week's live broadcast. And as I say, we're so grateful for you and for you being here. And we will see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.